Hi guys, welcome to the Legal Frontier. For today's episode, we'll be covering the lawful basis for processing personal data under GDPR Article 6. We'll also look at a real-world case involving TikTok and its €750,000 fine for violating children's privacy. Let's dive in. Let's start with the first lawful basis after Article 6, which is consent. Consent means that the data subject has given permission for the data to be processed for one or more purposes. It has to be a clear affirmative action, like checking a box or signing up for a newsletter. Consent must be freely given, specific, informed, and unambiguous. In order to obtain freely given consent, it must be given on voluntary basis. We will look further into consent in another video. It's important to note that consent is crucial, but it's not always the most reliable legal basis because it can be withdrawn at any time by the data subject. So businesses and governments need to have other legal bases in place too, for more safety if possible. Let's look at the real-world case involving TikTok. In 2021, TikTok was fined €750,000 by the Dutch Data Protection Authority. The violation: TikTok's privacy statement was only available in English, making it impossible or very difficult for Dutch children to understand exactly how the data was being used. The GDPR requires consent to be informed, and this failure violated that requirement. Next, we'll look at contractual necessity. This legal basis applies when processing personal data is necessary to perform a contract. For example, when an online store processes your address to ship an order. The lawful basis is contractual necessity. It's important to remember that the processing must be directly related to the contract. If a company processes more data than required, then another lawful basis is needed. Now let's talk about the third legal basis after Article 6, which is compliance with the legal obligations. Companies often need to process personal data in order to comply with laws such as tax regulations or employment law. This lawful basis is straightforward. If a company is required to process data by law, it's permitted under GDPR. Now let's look at the next lawful basis, which is vital interests. This is used in situations where processing is necessary to protect someone's life or safety. While it's rare, it's often used in emergencies. For example, hospitals might process medical data in life-threatening situations without needing consent due to this lawful basis. This legal basis only applies in extreme circumstances and is usually seen in health-related situations. The next lawful basis is a public task. This applies when processing data is necessary for performing a task in the public interest or exercising official public authority. public authorities like the government and organizations like schools or government agencies may use this lawful basis. So it's not possible for private companies to use this lawful basis. An example is when processing data for national census or public health purposes would fall under this category. It's about serving broader public interest and often requires backing by law. Finally, let's discuss the last lawful basis, which is legitimate interests. This is flexible lawful basis used by businesses when processing is necessary for their legitimate interests or those of a third party, unless these interests are outweighed by the rights of the individual. A common example is direct marketing, as long as it doesn't override the privacy rights of the individual. However, businesses using this need to balance their interests with the right of the data subject, especially if children are involved. So, returning to the TikTok case, the Dutch DPA launched an investigation after concerns about children's privacy. Since the public statement wasn't in Dutch, children couldn't understand how the data was collected or used. Under GDPR, children are considered a vulnerable group, so this lack of transparency was a big issue in the case. TikTok later made changes to protect users under 16, but the case highlights the importance of clear communication, especially when dealing with a minor's data. TikTok has since lodged an obligation to the fine, but it's a reminder that failing to comply with the GDPR can be very costly. So here is a quick recap. Consent must be given freely, specific, informed and unambiguous, especially when dealing with vulnerable groups like children. Contractual necessity applies only when processing is essential for performing a contract. Compliance with legal obligations covers processing when it's required by law. Vital interests protect life and safety in emergency situations. Public tasks involve tasks carried out by the public interest, typically by public authorities. Legitimate interest requires a balancing a business's need with the rights of the individual. That's all for today. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore Article 9 and the rules surrounding special categories of data. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for listening to The Legal Frontier.